Hello, Cosmic Soul. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video marks a beginning of a new series called Canada Under the Stars. And in this section of the channel, I will be using astrology to explore what's happening in Canada, to explore Canadian political processes, leadership dynamics, and key decision-making moments, always from an analytical and non-partisan perspective. I want to be transparent, though, that like anyone following politics, I do have personal opinions, personal views, and critiques. However, in this segment, my intention is to approach each chart with as much objectivity and neutrality as I humanly can, letting astrology lead the analysis. So the goal of this series is it's not to promote political opinions, but to offer another perspective, another lens for understanding how processes unfold over time. For those of you who are new here, my name is Laura. I am a professional astrologer. My work focuses on modern and shamanic astrology, horary astrology, and applied astrological analysis for real life questions, situations, and decision making. So today's video looks at a very specific question. Will Pierre Poilievre win the leadership review scheduled for the end of this month, January 2026? So this analysis is based on traditional horary astrology principles. It's not a political opinion, and it's not based on polling. It's a chart-based analysis of the situation as it stands. So first of all, let me share the chart with you. Okay, I believe I'm sharing there. Okay, so to give first some context, because I needed it, I wasn't sure how the leadership review process worked. So I informed myself and understood that in the Canadian political system, a leadership review is an internal party process. It's not a general election and it's not a national vote. Party members evaluate the performance of their leader, usually after an election result, a period of internal tension, or when questions arise about cohesion, direction, or leadership capacity. So the purpose of the review is to determine whether the leader continues to hold the confidence of the party base or whether the party moves toward a leadership change or leadership transition. Depending on the outcome, this process can either strengthen the leader's authority or trigger a new phase within the party. So the first thing, let's start breaking this apart. In Horary Astrology, we see part by part on things that are related to competition. This falls into that category. Okay, so the first things that we look at is at the ascendant, because the ascendant in Horary Astrology represents the person in question. So the ascendant is in Aquarius and it represents Pierre Poilievre. So Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn happens to be in Pisces in certain degrees, right? And is placed on the first house. So Saturn here describes a person that works hard, that assumes responsibility and operates with order, with structure and discipline. At these degrees, Saturn has term dignity, which reinforces the idea of having operational control, being in a concrete capacity for taking action, and particularly at an internal and strategic level. So because also Saturn is in an angular house, the first house is angular, it means that it carries strength, it carries visibility, political vitality, and presence. So this is a Saturn that is strong. And essentially it's supported, although it does depend on the dispositor of Saturn, which is Jupiter in Cancer. We are not going to talk right now. We're not going to continue talking about what Jupiter in Cancer represents because um, it plays a key role, but we're going to talk about it later at the outcome when we're talking about the outcome. So if you're enjoying this video, by the way, please like, subscribe, and share to the channel because it's really going to support me and this type of content. Another thing that we take a look at is the moon. So the moon plays a central role in Horary Astrology. The moon is a fundamental luminary. Why? Because it represents several things. It represents the question itself, the development of events, and the movement of the process in particular. So in this chart, the moon is in a sign that it rules. So the moon is strong and in domicile dignity in the sign of Cancer. So this indicates what? Indicates capacity, a capacity for action, indicates emotional coherence and collective strength within the process itself. The moon is placed in the sixth house, which this is very telling to me. The moon, it explains where his attention is focused on. And his attention is focused on the people, the working class, public employees, unions, services, factories, and everything and anything that sustains the country's day-to-day functioning. The moon describes a leadership review that is then deeply focused on issues in Canada like labor issues, service efficiency, and working conditions, with a particular sensitivity towards those who keep the system running. The emphasis here is not on the elites or anything that symbolizes the elites, but on what is operational, functional, and concrete. After this, then we look at the success in Horary chart, which is shown by the cusp of the 10th house. And this is in Sagittarius. So we look at its ruler and where it's placed, and this Jupiter in Cancer, exalted and retrograde. So this gives it, this process of success, a lot of strength. It gives legitimacy and collective emotional support. It's a Jupiter that represents visible backing, popularity, and a solid emotional base. However, Jupiter is also in a cadent house and is retrograde, specifically in the second phase of retrogradation for Jupiter. This indicates that there is a period of review, internal criticism, and reassessment, both within the party and in public perception. This means also that progress is slow, but it's steady. And the real momentum consolidates when Jupiter turns direct in March in 2026. So from the period, during the period of the leadership review, Jupiter is retrograde. It continues to be retrograde until mid-March, I believe, when it goes direct. So during all that period, there's going to be a review, a reassessment, etc., which makes sense, right? So even though that there is a period of reassessment, the power of Jupiter is clear. Success exists and carries weight, even though it must pass through a phase of adjustment. Another point that I find very interesting is the Sun and Venus. So the Sun in this chart is over the ascendant. The chart, the Sun indicates honor, prestige, backing from spheres of power. It means also recognition of the leadership role, though The sun is in Aquarius, the sign of its exile. So this suggests that support does exist, but is not without internal tensions, is not without ideological disagreement. So it means that within the party, there are people that disagree with opinions or visions of the party or Pierre Poilievre himself. And there are certain tensions, but they will support him. Venus is usually a natural benefic, is also very close to the ascendant on the first house, but is peregrine and combust. Peregrine means that it doesn't have any special dignity, and combust means that it's very close to the sun. And the sun being so close to it, it illuminates, it shines its light so strongly that it cannot see. It cannot see clearly. It burns. It's like it burns the eyes of the person. When you look at the sun, it can damage your eyes and it doesn't let you see clearly. That's what happens when it's combust. Venus, this is interesting because Venus represents it, or it rules the third house. And the third house is associated with media and public opinion. So this shows that there is a strong media presence surrounding Pierre Poilievre. However, Venus being peregrine and combust lacks clarity because they cannot see, right? These points to confusing messages, distorted narratives, and difficulty communicating with balance. The media climate, therefore, may be very intense, very polarized, or lacking objectivity. Now, I'm going to quickly remove all of this so we can see what we're going to say next. So next, we're going to talk about the aspects. So the aspects and the development. The moon here in this chart plays a very important role in how the situation unfolds. First, the moon is now in conjunction with Jupiter, but it's going to get at the exact point of conjunction. That's going to be a union, right? It's an applying conjunction. So both they're moving towards each other. So the moon is moving towards Jupiter, Jupiter is moving towards the moon. So they will join together. And they are directly linking then the internal leadership review process with the success. Then the moon forms a trine. So here is important. But then the moon will continue moving until it gets to 28 degrees, 30 minutes of Cancer, making a trine with Saturn. And Saturn, we said it represents Pierre. Okay? So making that Saturn means that making that trine with Saturn means that the moon acts as an intermediary and uniting the success that represents Jupiter with the figure of Pierre. This sequence of aspects is highly favorable. First, the internal party process validates the outcome, and then the outcome consolidates in the figure of the leader. So, based on this Horary chart, the answer is very clear. Pierre Poilievre wins the leadership review in January 2026. The result comes with solid internal support, particularly from sectors of the party that value order, structure, responsibility, and operational coherence. This is not an emotional or impulsive endorsement. It's built on function, discipline, and the perception of capacity to sustain that leadership. The process is not without criticism, like I said, or internal questioning. Retrograde Jupiter describes a phase of review, evaluation, and reassessment that is going to go through and that is necessary within the party. However, rather than weakening him, this phase ultimately reaffirms his position. A strong Saturn in the first house talks about resilience, control, and the ability to withstand pressure, as well as having the capacity to move through the process without losing authority or presence. The sequence of aspects confirm that leadership is first validated through the internal party process and then consolidated in the figure of the leader. So this concludes the first video of Canada of the Under the Stars. If you'd like to explore how horary astrology or your natal chart can support you in your life, can provide clarity in your own decision making, whether it's personal, business, career, or professional, strategic, etc., I offer private astrology sessions. So you'll find the details in the description below. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye.